Database security is one of the most important aspects of database theory, but we must know the basics before we jump into it. In this chapter, we cover threats to databases, types of security controls, SQL injection, and types of infrastructures which can help address database security. Ideally, we only want authorized users accessing our databases. There are three major types of threats. Loss of integrity means an unauthorized user made any update. Loss of availability means an unauthorized user deleted something. Loss of confidentiality is a data breach where an unauthorized user now has your data. There are a number of control measures or actions to prevent security issues we can take. Generally, authorized users are the only ones who should be accessing our database, so we set security mechanisms. Ideally, access, inference, and flow controls are set up to address loss of integrity and loss of availability. Data encryption is used to address loss of confidentiality, unless the hacker can decrypt your data, of course. You could use an encrypting file system, or EFS. On the web, you may want to have encryption or a login for a file or a specific folder. And, as a reminder, you can use PHP code to encrypt files. The DBA is paid a lot of money to keep the database safe wherever it is stored, on a server or computer. Often, a virtual private network may be used. Some systems may log you out after a certain time or populate an "Are you still there?" timer to prevent unauthorized access. This information is logged for later reference. In theory, the more sensitive the data, the more secure your database should be. You don't want to be the next company issuing refunds or apologies due to a data breach. You may want to consider clearance. Who will be given authorization and how will they access the database? Ideally, you want to go with security over precision, but your view needs may determine the focus here. Privacy goes beyond security. Consider your social security number. It is secured if it is in a safe place. It is private if only you know it. This is why who the authorized users are is very important. Users can be given access to entire databases or individual tables. In theory, if a user only needs to update one table, only give them access to that table. You can also provide privileges using the create view commands. You can grant permissions based on project needs, or revoke permissions when necessary, including abuse or termination. You can also use the grant option command to set specific table privileges. Generally, your authorization access will come down to two things. Are you necessary? And do you need to use the database? Well, also your trustworthiness. Oftentimes, you may only want to provide read authorization to avoid any unnecessary updating. Notice the nulls here imply you do not have access. Unfortunately, sometimes nulls give away information too. Consider Smith here. Why would his or her job performance not be visible unless it was poor? Though this could be Smith accessing the table and has not put this information in. Discretionary access is access that is up to the DBA or at the DBA's discretion. Discretionary access may be modified more often than other access types. Role-based access is where your job may very well determine the type of authorization you have. Sometimes you may be restricted even further on what you can view, such as label-based security. XML is largely just a storage receptacle for data, so it is a great idea to encrypt info in an XML file. Once you have a database live on a web server, you add more security threats. SQL injection is similar to a web hacker, where they insert something which is not supposed to be there, but impacts the entire website or database. In practice, SQL injection is done to get access to information or data as needed. Very, very common in data breaches. SQL injections may also update your databases in ways you don't want. Hence, backups are always needed. All in all, SQL injection gives the advantage to the hacker instead of the DBA. There are security techniques you can use by making your database harder to understand to some. Statistical databases may not excite a hacker, especially if you remove all identifying information. Flow control access means Bobby may only be able to make an update if Jimmy approves it. Like any communication, the noise goes through a channel. As with anything in life, there are workarounds to circumvent these set controls. Hence, we need to always consider encryption. The better the encryption, the harder to decrypt. You may have seen these types of encryptions when setting up internet connection to a network. The encryption algorithm you use depends on how secure you need your data to be. While digital signatures and digital certificates are more common for accessing websites and emails, they will work with a database too. As hackers come up with new strategies for causing trouble, we must continue to be ready. Security issues impact individuals, workers, and companies. The more secure your database, the better chance your database survives without issues. There is an additional label-based security by Oracle. Here is a visual of how Oracle uses label-based security. Here is a visual of how labels of data and users relate within Oracle. By now, you should have an enhanced understanding of database security.